Okay, Spencer Harkins in the hot seat here, and what could be more appropriate? Episode number 69, Pit Viper in the house here. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Nice. Thanks for having me.
Nice. Also joining us, our great co-host, Aaron Lutzi. Aaron, how you doing, bro?
Doing great. Fixing to be a lot better. This will be a fun one.
Yeah. Spencer, welcome, buddy. You are like the one of the newer members of the Second Nature Slack community. We were happy to see you jump in there, and here you are pulling you onto the podcast quickly. You and I have seen each other around the trail running community a couple of times, but we've never had a chance to like really go deep dive, long form chit chat. So this one will be a really fun one for Aaron and I personally, but also I'm sure for the audience. Let's start with just a quick personal background. What's your experience in the industry? How'd you end up at Pit Piper?
Yeah, experience in the industry. Let's go broad industry, outdoor industry, I guess. Yeah, being just a lifetime skier, with the classic dream of being the professional skier. So all of my efforts went towards that my entire life. Kind of right as I gave up that dream, I was like, I should probably try and get a job. I'd been skiing at Alta religiously at that point, and the founders of Pit Viper skied there, and I decided that they should be my best friends because I was like the biggest fan of the brand of all time. Um, so I made sure to make them my best friends and followed them around and told them I'd take any job, whatever you got. And finally, they did their kind of first round of hiring, and I threw myself at them. Um, there's a whole story out there you can read about live crabs and whatnot, but yeah, I got a job as like the events boy. They gave me a truck to drive around, and a 10 by 10 tent and said go party. And I took that and ran with it, and then kind of took over more and more as the company grew, and we all grew together. It's been awesome.
The sunglass company that's serious about taking things less seriously. I'd actually love to know what the onboarding was like. Was it as simple as like, here's the keys, go party? I mean, or is there some method to the madness beyond that? Or is that actually the secret sauce, that there is no rule?
So yeah, 2017, that was truly the onboarding process. It was I remember like talking to my boss on first day, and he was like, I'm like, what should I do? And he's like, yeah, you should just like figure out what parties to go to and like, I don't know, maybe try and trade pit vipers for stuff. And that was like literally it. And I remember it was probably a year in, I was out on the road at some bike event, and he was like, hey dude, there's like a massive pile of boxes on your desk here. I had like a bike stand and shit at that point. He's like, why are you getting so much stuff? Like it's kind of getting to be too much. So that's kind of how it was at the beginning, where it was just like, here's no boundaries, and then you kind of push it a little bit too far and then learn. But yeah, we were really scrappy at that point.
So you were the events guy, Aaron. It feels like maybe there's an interesting parallel here to the John Paradine episode, like with field marketing. Is there something that we should touch on here?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a seeding strategy in place and probably at the core of what you're doing, but that hand-to-hand kind of building relationships in person, and you actually have value to bring to everyone in the sense of a physical product as well. Was it more about brand stoke or getting people fired up on the product? Like, what do those conversations look like as you're building relationships with people in all these different industries?
Yeah. I mean, it was like very loose. I was thinking back to actually like an interview I did just as I was preparing for this meeting mentally. An interview I did for, I think it was Bike Mag, where it was like 30-second interviews at Sea Otter. Do you know what I'm talking about, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember intentionally just botching it. They gave me the mic and I was like, Pit Viper, kind of like long pause. Like you can watch the video on the internet, like just like totally intentionally blew the 30 seconds. Because again, like we really didn't know what we were doing. There was no strategy, not much to it, just kind of like having as much fun as possible. But yeah, the events were all about touching people, just getting to as many people as we possibly could, and getting as much product out as we could. We still kind of run the same events program that we have for years, of like a lot of selling product at different sport events. Selling it heavily discounted so that people get a lot of value out of it still, and get as much out as we can, try and win every event by the end of it.
I hope people are watching this episode on YouTube, because you showing up at an event looking the way that you do, you inherently stand out. And one of the things that I really want to touch on here, you being the VP of brand, in case we hadn't mentioned that yet. One of the things that makes Pit Viper so powerful and noticeable in the industry is just the way that it shows up, and brand is so important to Pit Viper. We'll come to that in a bit, but first, like some general context setting and personal curiosity for me. Can you just give us kind of the background of the brand, the co-founders, who it sounds like are your best buddies? Also, what was their original insight? How did it start?
Original insight is a great thing to ask. That's not how this brand started, which is, I think, one of the things that drew me to it the most is like the authenticity of the brand. Um, so yeah, founder Chuck Mumford is skiing professionally on the Free Ski World Tour, going competition to competition, living in his van. I say skiing professionally, but like, you know, you guys understand how much money that possibly could be.
Yeah.
So he's living in a van. He breaks his sunglasses and decides to go just to the Army surplus store. That's like most local to the contest he was at. And there on the rack is a pair of Pit Vipers. He grabs those and he's like, those are the coolest things I've ever seen. Puts them on, and buys them. But at that point, like, yeah, the original Pit Vipers, it's a 90s military shooting, you know, ballistic safety glass. Something you can only buy like dead stock from somewhere like that. So he buys those, kind of brings them home, is wearing them around, and people just really take to them, to the point where he's like, I got to stick with this. This is my new look. You know, it's this big shield. Nobody's wearing a big shield like that anymore. It's unique. They're adjustable. They're really cool. So he goes online and finds more, where he bought the first 1,000 of them on like whatever, you know, militarysurplus.com, for like 99 cents a piece, and ships them to his buddy's house. So then he starts just kind of like trading those, you know, trading them for beer, trading them for rides to the ski area, hot dogs, whatever it is. Um, and then eventually painting them as well, just because Chuck's like a creative weirdo, like super early 90s inspired, especially. So he's just like, I don't know, I'm going to paint these, whatever. Um, all the while he's doing this in Utah and kind of living in his buddy's driveway. Um, and his buddy sees like the momentum from all this. It's like, dude, like you can't just like continue running a business off of Facebook, like custom painting sunglasses, and like you kind of have something here. Like, can I start a website for this? And that's really how it all started. So then they sold through the first, yeah, 1,000, bought another 1,000 dead stock ones, on the internet, and kept painting them, selling them through pitviper.com, whatnot, and then ran out. So when they ran out, that's when they took to Kickstarter. This is back in like peak Kickstarter era,
Ah,
2014, to have molds made. So they sent a pair over to a factory, had molds made, raised $35,000 on Kickstarter. And then we were a legitimate business after that. And yeah, since then it's just been all like natural profit driven growth. Um, and yeah, we just kind of call it the joke that went too far. Uh, none of this was intentional, and like none of this was some like killer insight. You know, like if I had to say, like starting a sunglass business is a fucking good one. You know, they're small, they're high margin, like they're few sizes, like it's an awesome business to be in. But
ah.
like none of this was intentional or thoughtful. Just like, yeah, the joke that went too far.
It's interesting that the differentiation of the brand was sort of built in from the origin of the whole thing of like these are ridiculous looking and I'm the only person,
Whoa.
I'm going to put this out. But then
Yeah.
also like that's so much to play with. That's so much to work with of like, yeah, we're differentiated. We do something entirely different. Let's lean into this and build out the rest of the look and feel of this and really double down on everything that we got here. We're special and different, and we don't have to like manufacture that. It's built in. It's
Totally.
so much to work with.
Very much just a reflection of who Chris and Chuck are as well too. Like Chuck being so inspired by like early 90s and that look and style. Chris is like one of the funniest people you've ever met too. That's the other co-founder. Um, so like everything was just like, hey, we're partying, we're having fun, and this is what our brand should look like.
It reminds me, Aaron, of what we said about Hoka too, right? When they launched their brand, it was visually just different and caught on. Of course, they don't have the same kind of playful brand that Pit Viper does, but in terms of distinctness of product and visual differentiation, maybe there's a little bit of a commonality there. All right, so let's talk about your role specifically because I think it's potentially, one of, if not the most important role at the business. You can confirm or deny that, but brand for Pit Viper is incredibly important, right? And it is, from my perspective, kind of a brand that's led through its storytelling, its marketing, just its vibe, its playfulness. It's kind of like Liquid Death, I would say, in some ways. I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but as you think about being the steward of the brand publicly and within the business, what are the types of things that are at the front of your mind?
I got lost in the question because I was thinking about like a drinking game where if you mention Liquid Death or Satisfy, then you should have to like drink.
Excuse me, I'll see myself out.
No, no, it's like totally relevant.
You
I'm just
guys are
like,
older than Liquid Death. Like maybe they stole your playbook.
those guys are as good as it gets. We all know that. Um, and yeah, so I'm actually going to have to ask you to repeat the final
I'm
question
just
there because
asking you, you being the VP of brand, how do you think about, staying true to what makes Pit Viper special, which is the playfulness, the irreverence that the brand is so associated with?
yeah, so I'll preface that answer by saying like we have no idea what we're doing. And the whole thing is like the greatest learning process of all time. So I don't know. And as the brand continues to evolve, it's harder and harder to stay true to that. Um, I'll give you an example here. Have you guys heard of Dick's? It's a sport store.
The
Yes.
sporting goods store, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Of all places, Dick's told us that they wouldn't carry us because we have swear words on our packaging and on our website. Um, and that's a huge account potentially for us as we step further and further into retail. So in this last year, we actually, really did some soul searching. We're like, shit, do we really need to have profanity on our packaging and our website in order to best communicate our brand? And we decided the time that we don't. So moving forward, we're like removing profanity from kind of those public places and whatnot. Um, and I don't know if that's the right call or not right now,
Mm.
because like we're just learning and we're figuring it out as we go. Um, but yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about the original history of the brand, looking back at our original marketing. I reference our Kickstarter page at least once a week, because that's where I think so much of the secret sauce for this brand came from was like that original spirit. Um, I think people get tired of hearing me talk about the Kickstarter page and the brand voice from there, but yeah, try and go back to that as much as possible. And I think our purpose was clear from the beginning, so sticking to it is the hardest part now.
I gotta check that out, Lucy. You gotta find a way to
Oh, it'll
surface
definitely.
that in the newsletter and show notes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that one shows up in the show notes for sure. And I think I was reading something actually that Alan Lim had written on a yearly review thing, and he was saying if there's a business case for it, then it's already been done, and that's we're already past that. Like we're trying to break new ground, so it's kind of interesting to think like, is it the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? Do we need to rely on a business case or not? I think from the outside, it seems like you guys have sort of communicated what you need to communicate and established like what Pit Viper stands for. And maybe the profanity was necessary to do that, to break the mold, to really push past what everybody else was doing. But now sort of job done, and you can focus on the rest of building out the brand and communicating to an even wider audience in a meaningful way. I think you can still get that job done without it. But I do think that the sports world in general. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about seeding into some newer spaces. Like I know you've been at some of the ultra races and stuff like that, but I
Mhm.
do think that Pit Viper, belongs there in order to sort of reset and shake up these industries. People can get so serious when it comes to getting into technology and performance and everything like that. And to have somebody to like grab the community by the shoulders and shake them, like we're here, remember, to have fun, is sort of a necessary component. Like you guys are necessary to the growth of all sports, in my opinion. And I think I'm really interested to hear. I mean, it sounds like you've been seeding glasses to a lot of ultra runners. Can you talk about how you think about, kind of expanding out beyond ski and snowboard?
Totally, yeah. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think so many of these sports really need to be shaken up. I kind of look at like the more and more serious sports as the ones that need to be shaken up the most. Like one that I've been thinking about way too much for the size of the market right now is cross country skiing, where it's like every person there is wearing pit vipers already. But like that sport is so serious, you know, there's no interesting brand in that space. And it'd be so
Mm.
fun to show up there and be like, actually a good example, we showed up, we saw our audience was, we had a big audience coming from the rowing community, you know, crewing, rowing, like the long boat, 10 people doing it, whatever, Cox. Um, and so we decided to take the events program out to a couple of those events. And for like years, our best selling event of all time was Head of the Charles, this like Boston rowing event. I think it was a really prime example where it's like these stuffier sports are desperate for somebody to come shake it up. So yeah, it's been nice to be received that way. But yeah, how we think about it, mostly how we think about expanding into different sports has been like following our own passions and interests. So the first sport that Pit Viper really broke into outside of skiing was mountain biking, just based on the fact that the co-founders and everyone were into mountain biking, and people were like, "Hey, you should come to Sea Otter and see what happens." And yeah, got a lot of traction from that. So running is definitely another one of those where, especially myself and a couple other employees, have gotten just more and more into it. So we just keep putting more effort into it and kind of getting return from it because yeah, we think there's space for it. But yeah, just like you said, like we just think there needs to be more fun and to show up and create fun. So it's been fun to kind of study the space a little bit more and hopefully give back to it more in the upcoming years. One of those ways that we're giving back to it is actually like this pair that I'm wearing right now, as you guys have seen and both mentioned in podcasts and whatnot. Like you're seeing, you know, Helen Mino Faulkner and MK Sullivan, whatnot, all wearing these. And um, I'd like to think that people's times are coming down because they feel good about themselves and they can wear a photochromic lens with a rainbow heart-shaped pair of glasses on. It's yeah, I
There's a
think they'd say the
certain
same.
aerodynamic quality to those heart-shaped lenses that probably make HMF and MK a little bit faster. That's actually what I wanted to ask you about too. Is there's sort of a virality inherent in the Pit Viper energy, which then is translated into the product. And I don't know if you have official relationships with people like Helomino Faulkner, but I think, especially within trail running, you guys probably draft off the reputations and the performances of athletes who you don't have formal partnerships with because they just vibe so much with your brand and your product. Can you talk about that? Just like the maybe free marketing or just like the inherence of the virality of the product?
I guess I want to like tread lightly on that one because I'm like, it is easy to get free marketing out of people when you have sunglasses that are bright and bold and they kind of create a lot of your personality when you're wearing them. So yeah, it's definitely a balance of making sure that everyone is getting value out of it for sure. Um, that's definitely one of the best things about the sunglass game too, is our ability to seed product out. You know, we're a high margin business, so it's a lot easier for us to get our product to more people. Um, and that's yeah, that's been pretty sweet.
Aaron, maybe this would be a better question for Aaron, right? Because I don't want to put you in a tough spot, but Aaron's obviously a marketer also. So how would you be thinking about that, Aaron? When you like from my perspective, I don't know if you have formal partnership with like Katie Scheid or Germain Granger, but the two of them, obviously two of the best trail runners in the world, and they like probably were a big part of popularizing the product in the trail running community. And I don't think you guys actually had a real partnership. Lucy, do you want to comment on this? Like how that would be valuable for a brand?
I think it really comes back to seeding, which we sort of talked about before. You know, seeding is basically just strategically hooking up the right people with the right gear. And there have been many other brands in the sunglasses space and otherwise, and even Red Bull, who I worked for, who did exactly that, where we found the people who were actually the real movers and shakers that were actually out there making it happen and made sure that they had everything that they needed to make it happen. So there is like a value exchange typically with those bigger names where it's like maybe, you know, I don't want to presuppose anything, but I'd be surprised if some of those big hitters had paid for the glasses. You know, I would imagine you're seeking those people out and taking care of them. And And the other thing about running any brand like that is like you probably have other things that you can open the door for those people, where it's not just a, you know, yeah, you might see it from the outside as free marketing, but probably on the back end, it's like, hey, let's plug you in here. Let's give you an opportunity.
I will comment specifically on all the names mentioned, though. Yeah, German and Katie were official key players. They had proper salaries for that year, where Katie won UTMB, and unfortunately, Oakley approached them with a number we could never possibly match after that. So still, yeah, sad to lose them. Especially looking at probably the announcement next week. There's one name left on that list who hasn't been mentioned.
Dot.
What do you look for when you're looking at brand partnerships like that? Are you I don't know. I want to leave it open actually. What are the things that you're looking for when you're thinking about like who are we going to add officially to the team?
Yeah, I want somebody who's their name is going to be kind of inseparable from our brand, where it's like you think of that person and you can think of the sunglasses they're wearing. We're definitely looking for the freaks. We don't necessarily care about performance in the same way that, an Oakley or a bigger brand would just care about the podium. It's like we want that big personality. Another one in the mountain bike space that comes to mind for me, Aaron, is Kurt Voorhees, who,
Yes.
like, yeah, one of the most competitive mountain bikers of all time, but also like the reason that we're working with him is that he's a weirdo. Dylan, if you're not aware, or if anyone listening isn't aware, the thing that I think has most stood out from him lately is all of his recumbent bike videos. I think he's posted more videos on a recumbent bike than he has on a traditional mountain bike in the last year. Wheelies, jumps, like whatever. And yeah, it's just entertaining. It's weird. It's special. And that's the kind of stuff that we really look for.
That stuff absolutely smashes too. Everybody loves watching. Kurt Voorhees is a legend no matter how you slice it, but the stuff and the creativity that he brings to the table is just fascinating.
Lucy, it reminds me of something that we talked about, individually a number of times, but the importance of aligning the athlete with the values of the brand and being like a walking representation of Pit Viper in this case means that you kind of need to be a freak, not necessarily a freak of an athlete or a freak with performance. That would be awesome, but just a freak and a different person with your own unique personality.
What does the onboarding look like for an athlete? When you speak about brand and their role in building out the brand, getting visibility, doing the job that they need to be done, how do you let them know what good looks like for you?
This is one of these situations where we're learning, and I'd love your opinions and advice and whatnot. I told you before the interview, I learned so much by watching your videos. So you tell me what to do. We have created, PDFs and decks and videos on how we want to do stuff. We actually had a lot of success with like a 3-minute video we made last year on like how to shoot a video. Simple stuff like hold your phone vertical and like get up a little bit closer to a person. Fake fake energy if you have to, whatever it is. But yeah, we're not the most seasoned team, and we're just learning. So I'd love to hear what you think we should do as well.
Well, I've been having this conversation a handful of times recently with a lot of other people, and the way that I've been thinking about it the most is trying to identify, in some cases your KPI, your key performance indicator, but ultimately, like, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, or problems, your top 3 things that you want to accomplish, right? That's what it all boils down to. KPIs are just like, those are the dots on the way to where you're going. Mm-hmm. And so what I like to think about is like, how can I line up the things that I'm trying to solve for? Those, let's just call it 3 things that I need to get done this year. And then how can I line up the athletes specifically behind each one of those? Because a lot of times brands will like start working with an athlete and be like, do all this stuff or just be everything. And then the athlete doesn't know where to put their energy. But then also at the end of the year, you can't really tell, like, did the athlete do what we needed them to do? And then you revert back to their contest results or some arbitrary, like, yeah, they're cool. And so putting them in line of like, we need this athlete to do this thing, and we're going to make sure that they're focused on it. They understand what we're looking for, allows them to be successful and allows you to accurately evaluate if they were successful or not, but also allows you to really heavy up the activation around solving that problem, utilizing that athlete. Where I feel like so many conversations with brands are so amalgamous, where it's just like, just go be you and we'll figure it out. And then at the end of the year, you've spent this money and you're like, right, what did we truly get that's trackable or useful or whatever? And there is stuff that you can't necessarily track, but if you can at least put some structure in place of like, these are the problems that we're trying to solve, and we think athletes could play a big role in solving those problems. It could be as simple as like, we need our Instagram following to grow. It's going to come down to collaborative posts. It's going to come down to like custom stuff, this, and this. That's fine. It doesn't have to be the craziest, biggest goal, but at least identifying like, what are the jobs to be done by the athletes or the people involved with the brand, and then how can I line up the right people behind that, and just really focusing in on that, I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak to that for a second, it's been a pretty funny process of, if you had a contract with us, 6 years ago, the amount of lines that we've added to that contract, like you can just see our iterative learning every year. We're like, ooh, we need to make sure that they're available for, some in-person activation. Oh, we need to make sure that they're available for some photo shoots, things like that. So thank you to any of our athletes who are listening to this by chance who have stuck with us. Yeah, because we just keep figuring it out year after year. And those are some really good examples as well.
Awesome. So talking a little bit more about the business, one of the things Aaron and I talk about on the podcast a bunch is category expansion. Of course, you're mostly known for the sunglasses and the rotating performance oriented eyewear that you've been shuffling through our conversation. But also it seems like apparel is becoming a larger part of the business. So maybe speak a little bit about that, diversifying away from just being a sunglasses brand to being something that people can interface with in other ways.
Yeah, the apparel expansion's been really interesting. We just started with that right away, of course, because we needed t-shirts to wear, and hats and whatnot. And then it's just been kind of fun. But yeah, we hired our first apparel manager probably 4 years ago, and they built out a lot of stuff, and that's all been trial and error as well. I don't know if you all saw, but we made like a full mountain bike apparel, technical apparel line, full enduro kit, made pants, made shorts, all sorts of stuff. Um, so it's been just a lot of trial and error. That didn't work. Turns out people didn't want to buy apparel from Pit Viper for technical mountain biking. But however, I'm wearing Sportaroy right now, which is from our sport denim line. We created like some really stretched denim stuff that sold super well for a while, full kit, and then moved into sport corduroy this year as we were like trying to keep it interesting every year. Sportaroy is doing quite well. I'm wearing this is the actual bush pattern as well. You may have heard of Realtree. This is definitely not Realtree. This is actual bush, and that's been something that people have found pretty successful as well. So yeah, we just kind of keep expanding. We have, really one dedicated person on the apparel team, but it's tons of fun, and we all definitely put more of our energy into that program than we should in terms of revenue split. But it's, yeah.
And Aaron, feel free to chime in here, but that's interesting to hear that the consumer wasn't necessarily interested in buying highly technical mountain bike apparel from Pit Viper, but that at least more of the lifestyle oriented, quote unquote, Sportaroy and the other products that you mentioned are resonating more, which to me makes sense, right? Because Pit Viper, and the sunglasses especially, yeah, you use them for performance, but there's this kind of a certain lifestyle ethos behind it, I think, that Pit Viper more represents. Lutzi, you want to comment on that, or Spencer?
Man, all I can say, I just love all this stuff. The Sportaroy. I mean, I'm trying to hold it together a little bit over here. And if you're not watching this podcast on YouTube, you're missing out in a major way. But I love that the aesthetic that you guys have created allows you to actually zig where everybody else is zagging. Like, it's required almost for your stuff to be on brand is for you to zag instead of making the technical apparel. It is making that lifestyle stuff that resonates even better with your brand in so many different ways. And this has got to be so hard for anybody to follow you on, like there's nobody's going to copycat. No one's going to come up with Sportaroy. No one's going to come up with the patterns, the designs, and what an amazing place as a brand to be. That, can you imagine if anybody tried to, if Nike tried to rip this off, they'd be in.
Well, and that's where I was going to just go, right? You mentioned, you got to take a shot every time you mention Satisfy, but have there been
There you go.
copycats? Have there been people that have recognized Pit Viper's unique position and tried to draft in the wake?
I mean, have you seen sunglasses in the last 5 years?
Are they all
Like,
Pit Viper knockoffs?
I would say that pretty much every brand started making a Pit Viper after they started to see our success. And now you look, the top selling sunglass in the world is the Oakley Sutro, which is their big shield.
No way.
They weren't making that when Pit Viper started. The Smith Wildcat, yeah, I could name every brand, and they're all making their own Pit Viper. Yeah, we've certainly seen copycats, and then something that we never expected was the counterfeit thing went absolutely haywire for us as well.
Talk about that, because operators who make product, I know that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a massive problem. I mean, we've gotten a lot better at it over the last few years by hiring kind of outside team to take care of that. But we didn't have trademarks in place, even in the United States, let alone internationally, when that became a problem. So enforcing it wasn't even really possible. So yeah, if you think that your product might be something that people would counterfeit, make sure you have trademarks in place, because that's kind of step zero. And then you can start to enforce. And once we got that done, the enforcement's been pretty cool. It's been incredibly cool to follow. We have this person who will send us PDFs of these, like, hey, we got a factory raid in China last week, and you get photos of like all these factories who are, boxing stuff up, and then they'll seize the sunglasses, send them over to us. And we still haven't figured out what to do with seized counterfeits also. So if anyone has any Galaxy Brain ideas of
There's
what
got
to
to
do
be a
with.
marketing campaign around that.
Totally. We have thousands of pairs of like really, really shitty Pit Vipers.
So explain to me how that works. So a counterfeiter is manufacturing knockoff sunglasses, and then are they selling it on Amazon or
Every marketplace you could think of.
Hmm.
Yeah, from Depop to eBay to Amazon to Etsy, like every single marketplace. So it's kind of interesting because, for a while there it was a whack-a-mole of like, hey, I found this listing on eBay. Like, okay, we'll send that in. And then, but yeah, really the key is trying to find the manufacturers.
I'm going to put Ian Gates's law firm in the. Ian Gates is one of our listeners and has helped us out with a bunch of that stuff. I'll just put it in the show notes for anybody else that's in this same exact scenario, because that's a big part of what they do.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine.
That one really hurt too. Is like we worked so hard and we built this brand, and we want to have all of our employees send their kids to college and whatnot, and to see how much revenue most certainly went to the counterfeiters was, yeah, that hurts.
Yeah,
that was really rough.
Brutal. Both the knockoff from existing large incumbent brands and the counterfeiting from people who are probably just stone cold criminals, really shitty, but also a great indication that, people are noticing what you're doing and the impact that you're having in the market that they're playing in.
There's certainly some honor to it.
All right. So where do we want to go next? I think like customer loyalty, brand affinity is something that you could probably speak about a lot in terms of like, once somebody's in the Pit Viper ecosystem, is there anything that you guys think about in terms of like helping them be part of the Pit Viper journey? Like, I know, for example, you guys have almost 1 million followers on Instagram, and I don't know, maybe some of your customers are helping you with some of the content creation. I don't know if there's any UGC that you guys leverage, but talk a little bit about that. How do you bring the customer along on the journey?
Yes, there's so many different directions to answer that question with, whether it's like a loyalty program, or UGC, or even just like campaigns that we create. Like, I don't know if you probably haven't seen our 4th of July campaign that we've done the last few years. We call it the Internet Fair, which is like a content contest. Basically, we take like all the classic state fair, United States state fair contests, like biggest pig or like pig calling contest, and we host those online. So if you have a pair of Pit Vipers, you can shoot a video of yourself squealing like a pig as loud as you can and send it into us, and you might win a pair of Pit Vipers. So we think always about our like core customer when we're doing these campaigns and these stunts. Like that's always the person we're thinking about first. Mega fan is what we call them. And how can we continue to arouse them The UGC one is huge too. I mean, yeah, you look at our Instagram, you look at our TikTok, our YouTube, it's probably 40, 50% of our content on those social media platforms is coming from our audience, which is so cool. We've set up a really good system, just using like a collection page on our website to get that content back from them. We kick those people a gift card if we use any of their content. And that's been, a really awesome self-fulfilling program that, yeah, I think speaks a lot to the community for sure. Also, like wild to see things like there's a subreddit for Pit Viper, right? And it's really active. Um, and yeah, people make fan groups on Facebook, and yeah, we do everything we can to engage with that crowd and keep the community tight.
Talk about the loyalty program quickly because it's got a great brand behind it too.
You mean Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
Yeah. You can invest right now if you go on our website. Yeah, invest in Bitcoin. It seems to be going up.
Lucy, where you want to go next, bro?
I'm just hanging on here, to be honest. I mean, it's got to be harder than it looks. Like, it feels so simple in some ways, but it must be so challenging to continue to stay on brand because, like you said, it's like the joke that we took too far, but like you have to continue perpetuating some of this stuff. And how you think about, like on the website right now, it's like ski faster, coward. Like the way that you kind of like, needle but also encourage the people that are supporting the brand, that are getting excited with the brand. How do you keep it fresh? Because you've been making these jokes, you've been building the brand, you've been like you've been on this for a minute. How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it exciting? And how do you think about where to go next?
Yeah, bring us into some of those meetings, right? Like, how are you guys kicking around the ideas of what goes public, right? It's got to be hilarious.
It is hilarious. It's unbelievable. Let's see. How do we keep it fresh is the easiest thing in the entire world. We say this all the time, like we have too many ideas. The problem is execution. Our team, we hire really well. We hire people who maybe aren't the most experienced, but have like great brand cultural and like idea fit. So ideas are constantly coming in. That's why I joined the Slack channel for Second Nature. We're a Slack brand. Our Slack is very alive and well. We have lots of different inspiration channels, and that's definitely like the biggest piece of my creative secret is swipe files. Right? I'm sure you guys have heard that term before, but yeah, making sure that you log any inspiration you have, and put it somewhere so you can reference it back to it. So if you go on our Slack, we have like inspiration website, inspiration product photos, inspiration design, eyewear, soft goods, whatever. And of course, campaigns and everything. I think that's a really huge, awesome tool. If I can share anything here that like helps people, keep the swipe file. So yeah, to answer your question of how those like kind of brainstorms go, that's usually the place we start. I try and have the rule of make sure you have 25 ideas before you move forward with one. So let's say even for like, we want to promote a sale on an Instagram post. It's like, all right, well, let's go to the swipe file. Let's look through our ideas. Let's write down 25 different ideas, and then might pick the first one, might pick the fifth one, might hate all of these. But yeah, always making sure we're really thorough when we think about these things. But usually the answer is the one that makes you laugh the most. Is the right thing. So,
Lucy, have you ever heard of the swipe file idea? This feels like a great tactical takeaway for the audience because I've never done anything like that, nor even heard of what a swipe file is.
This is really common in the YouTube space, where when you see a thumbnail that you think is just like instantly catching you put it in the swipe file, and then when you're designing your next thumbnail, you take inspiration from each one of those of like what made you look, what made you click, what made you excited about this, and you kind of take the essence of each one and kind of boil it into your next thing. It's a really great starting point, so you're not cold starting all the time on ideas and stuff like that. I think actually BPC that we do frequently on the pod is exactly like, it's sort of our version of the swipe file, like stuff that we're excited about, stuff that caught our attention, stuff that we like. We're highlighting it to each other to say like, oh, check this one out, check this one out. I feel
I
like,
got
yeah.
to get better at that because I often notice things, and then when it comes time for me to, like you said, Spencer, actually take action against anything, it's like I've already forgotten what inspired me. It actually reminds me of a good quote of that, like inspiration is perishable, and you need to strike while the iron is hot. In other words, if you feel inspired about something, do not procrastinate, because by the time you take action against it, your inspiration will have disappeared. I want to hear more about like the actual X's and O's of the business. You don't have to reveal anything that's not public or whatever, but you mentioned at the top, like expanding more into retail, like how the brand is growing at this point, how many people are working there right now, and how you guys are thinking about your position in the market in the future.
Yeah, this is the part where I become really embarrassed with how little I know. My brain does not fire when I see a spreadsheet. And if I try and answer all these questions, I'll really show my cards at how bad I am with numbers, data, or giving a shit about any of that stuff. There are certainly people at the business who are really good at answering those questions, and I am simply not that person. So happy to answer some of those. Yeah, we're like 60 employees right now. Um, I believe retail, we're at like 20 or 30% of our business. We do expect that to grow. If you look at the other players in the eyewear space that we're now trying to take market share from, they're more like 50 to 80%. We were 100% direct to consumer, only a few years ago. But we've really been pushing into that direction to hit a wider audience. Yeah, we see ourselves as like one of the legitimate sport sunglass players, the one that encourages you to live on Party Mountain and have a good time. Oh, and we're moving more into snow goggles. That's something we're pretty excited about. We were the brand that told you to stop wearing goggles. We thought that goggles were pretty stupid, but turns out goggles are pretty good nowadays. And you put magnets in them, and they're pretty awesome. So we've been really moving heavily into that for snow and dirt.
There's a set of glasses that's like half glass, half goggle too, right? Where it
The
looks like a,
synthesizer, yeah, the
yeah.
goggle sunglass hybrid, aka Suggles.
I'm looking at them
Yeah.
right now.
Those are
What was
sweet. Yeah, the foam
how
gasket in there, you can remove them. People are loving those for running too. You take the foam out, it's just like mega coverage. Awesome for cycling. Wearing like we kind of designed them with helmets in mind. It's like,
Uh,
how do you wear sunglasses in the most approachable way with a helmet?
so maybe 6 or 12 months from now, Oakley will make this.
Yeah, like 6 or 9 months ago, they actually released one and announced it as a as the first goggle sunglass hybrid, which was pretty funny to see.
Jeez, man, capitalism, competition.
Hmm.
But again, a good indication that you guys are onto something special here. Maybe coming back to partnerships and stuff and the impact that they can have. One of the things that Aaron and I talked about in our award show episode, I mean, we were kind of talking about Taylor Swift and Timothy Chalamet, and I know you guys have a partnership with Rob Gronkowski, who is not core to the endemic audiences that you're usually reaching, but he's such a great brand fit. Can you talk about that partnership?
Yeah, the Gronk partnership is a really prime example of how Pit Vipers always rolled, where it's like all about authenticity and just real fit. Um, his so Rob is one of five brothers from like a wildly overperforming family. Every single one of them played pro ball of some sort, whether it was MLB or NFL. But yeah, so one of them reached out to us and was like, "Hey, I run this brand. I make a protein shaker that's insulated. Would you guys want to trade some product?" And I was like, "Wait, Gronkowski, yeah, sure, I'd love to trade. Here's like, they just hit us up on Instagram. Like, here's a shitload of sunglasses. Just give them to anyone that you know." Like 2 weeks later, we're looking at Instagram and the Barstool Sports account had like Rob Gronkowski takeover day, and Rob was wearing Pit Vipers like all over every single podcast, whatever it was on Barstool. And then he was the announcer, MC, I can't remember what you call it, host for a WWE event. Where he also chose to wear the same pair of Pit Vipers. It was like the least flashy, worst selling pair of Pit Vipers too. We're just like, man, this guy clearly loves it. Um, so yeah, we just kind of when we find those people who really cling to us, we really cling to them as well. And we've been embracing that relationship ever since. We've never been the brand who's like able to compete on salary or the amount of money that we can give somebody back. It's all about love. But yeah, we got the Gronk family out to Utah a couple years ago. It was a great video on our YouTube about it. And brought them out skiing at Deer Valley for a day. We took them out snowmobiling for a day in backcountry around the Park City area. And just have, yeah, kept that friendship going. We do stuff with them every year. It's fucking awesome.
That's amazing. There's been those moments for many brands, like, there's probably a long list of brands that got mentioned on Joe Rogan that are now like surviving off of one singular mention. And I've got to imagine that moment with Gronk on Barstool Sports probably made a big impact on the brand. Have there been any other big moments for Pit Viper that it just came together just as naturally, or even something that you'd kind of teed up?
Yeah, totally. Especially like the early ones were easiest to follow. I think one of our like comically biggest ones was this guy Larry Enticer. Do you guys remember who that was or is?
No.
Larry Enticer he was a viral video. He was a snowmobile kid from Toronto who coined the tagline "Just gonna send it."
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yep.
yeah, exactly. Um, we found him and he loved us, and we sent him Pit Vipers, and that person single-handedly grew our business like more than we could ever thank him for. It's pretty wild to see. After that, we had a really similar relationship with Travis Pastrana that we're certain had a huge impact as well. And that was, really based on like friendship, relationship rather than dollars. So we couldn't keep up when he got a bigger offer, but yeah, that's definitely a couple of the prime examples there.
I love this idea of when they cling to us, we cling to them. There's a certain amount of loyalty there. And, just being on this call and seeing you, the way you're showing up, you can't help but laugh and smile. But there also feels like there's a level of brilliance to this, Aaron. Don't you feel like there's a real intelligence underneath the comedy and the irreverence?
It's authenticity more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, we're having fun. This is exactly what it's supposed to be about. And I think, like I was saying earlier, sometimes we forget that stuff. We get wrapped up in the performance and the numbers and all the details, the technical bits. And we need Pit Viper. We need you guys to be here so that we remember why we're here in the first place too. Like, this is all supposed to be fun.
Should we move to BPC? I had one other thing that I was curious about before we close, if that's okay. Basically, I was wondering if, as you're thinking about the swipe files and stuff, and ideas are coming up, there's probably stuff that is edgy where you feel like this would be a risk. Is there anything where you guys have gone public with a risky thing that has either been super successful or backfired?
I'm laughing and not saying things out loud on purpose. Um, you could certainly Google some controversy if you really wanted to. Um, oh man, I'm trying to think of like something that won't get me in trouble.
If there's nothing there, we don't need to force it. But I just think just being in the room as you guys are kicking around these ideas or in your Slack channel, I bet it's just like nonstop entertainment.
It's certainly nonstop entertainment. Yeah, it's certainly we certainly encourage risk here, and keep writing that into brand guidelines and channel guidelines and everything for every year. Um, so it's like we're kind of taking micro risks almost every day. I mean, one that I can think of just a couple weeks ago that like went really well is a Instagram, TikTok video making a dirty soda. Do you guys know what a dirty soda is?
No.
It's a Utah trend. You guys wouldn't understand. It's you go through the Utah drive-through soda and you get your dirty soda. It's got like Diet Coke and like Red Bull and like coffee creamer and like 4 pumps of cherry and 4 pumps of vanilla. It's like really trendy in Utah right now because culture, whatever. So we taught you how to make a dirty soda from Maverick, and it was just Diet Coke and gasoline. And that video ended up being our most successful video ever on Instagram by the numbers, which is wild, and on TikTok.
Wow.
And you could certainly say that's risky. Encouraging people to make a gasoline drink is not something that I think an Oakley or another one of these big eyewear players would encourage you to do. So, but that one
Yeah.
was really well received, and nobody got grumpy about that one. But it certainly goes both ways every time.
Rad. Well, Spencer, this is one of my favorite episodes personally of Second Nature. So I'm so stoked you came on. It feels like we could do a bunch more here, and maybe we'll have you back on for an update in the future too. But we close most of our shows with the BPC segment. I told you to come prepared, rolling out the red carpet. What do you want to recommend to our audience, either brand, product, or content?
Yeah, I had to like think about this one for a second. And I pulled an example, so let me just pull my screen here to make sure I'm looking at it. Um, and I might have misinterpreted this, but I found this product pretty recently that got me really excited. It's called the ProLab One Flush Septic Treatment Package. I don't know if you guys have septic tanks, but it's basically like a little like chemical that you put into your toilet, and then it like makes your septic tank healthier. Um, and I'm really inspired by that one because their entire concept is that you buy a product and immediately flush it down the toilet. Like
It's so true. Yeah.
it's the
What a
greatest
brilliant
business
product.
model. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm like taking a lot of inspiration from that and trying to figure out how to do something similar here at Pit Viper in a sustainable way, of course.
All right. Great contribution to BPC. Aaron, you want to go next or should I?
You go.
A hard pivot. I am going to recommend a book for the Second Nature Book Club that is like a totally off brand for this conversation, but a gift that I received from the frequent co-host Steve Holmberg, who gave me a book called The Second Mountain by David Brooks, which I've been reading now for the last couple of weeks and that I'm about to finish. An amazing, incredible book about just like leading a committed life where you are thinking about more than just yourself and how you're orienting your life, your career, your relationships. An amazing book. But again, I feel silly recommending it or bringing that as my contribution here today. But Ming, go ahead and put that in the Second Nature Book Club. That's my contribution today.
Wow. Wow. Spencer, I just got to say, this has been everything I hoped it was going to be. Everything about this conversation was on brand, and just you crushed it, man. I want to use my BPC. Dylan, I'll follow you on the book thing because I want to use my BPC to shout out one of our homies. Matt Sharkey is putting out a book. Sharkey is an absolute legend. He's been on Second Nature. He's one of our mentors, and he's launching a book called American Denim: The Supposed Final Days and Resurgence of a Manufacturing Icon. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's available for pre-order, but Sharkey, I mean, his background came from skate. He's been in surf, like all over the place. Actually, speaking of surf, he was going to read a book called Barbarian Days. I'm not sure how that's going. But anyways, he's got a book that he's coming out with early next year, and we're super excited to support someone from our own community. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. American Denim should be a good one.
Hell yeah. Shout out Sharky.
There's no way we were going to come anywhere close to Spencer's contribution. We were
the Septic 3000 or whatever.
Just flush it down the toilet.
Just flush it. Hashtag just flush it. Spencer, you're the man, dude. For everybody in the Second Nature Slack community, make sure you go throw a high five or a DM to Spencer. And yeah, appreciate you coming on the show and just sharing a lot of your sense of humor and the story of Pit Viper, a brand that a lot of people can learn a lot from. All right, boys. Awesome episode. Episode 69 in the bank. Nice.